Don't come to Thanksgiving. It's family only. That was the message my daughter-in-law sent me after I paid $620,000 to save their home. I stared at those words on my phone screen, wondering how a woman I treated like my own daughter could send something so cold with the casual tone of someone canceling lunch plans. No explanation. No warmth. No hesitation. Just a single line meant to shut me out of a holiday I once hosted for the whole family. The same family table where I had fed them countless meals. The same Thanksgiving where my late husband used to carve the turkey while everyone laughed and argued over who got the crispy skin. Before I continue, let me ask you something. Thanksgiving is coming up soon, and I want to know, how are you preparing for yours this year? Are you hosting? Are you the one cooking the turkey? Or are you showing up with the pies? Maybe you're planning to skip it altogether this year. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what your Thanksgiving plans look like. And hey, if you've ever had your own revenge moment during the holidays, or if someone ever uninvited you from something after you helped them, I want to hear that story too. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get through this story together, because what happens next is going to shock you. Now, back to that message. I read it 3 times, each word sharper than the last. The funny thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives screaming. It slides in quietly, dressed in polite words that barely hide the cruelty underneath. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to call her immediately and ask what she meant. Part of me wanted to demand an explanation, to remind her of everything I had sacrificed. But another part of me, the part that had been growing quieter and smaller over the past 6 months, suddenly woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. So I typed one simple reply. Okay, noted. 2 words. That was all. I didn't argue. I didn't question her. I didn't beg for an invitation or remind her of the money I had given them. I just acknowledged her message the way you acknowledge a weather report. Simple, detached, final. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The years of bending, of excusing, of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't, all of that finally settled into a shape I couldn't ignore anymore. I set the phone down on my kitchen counter and walked to my bedroom. My house felt different that night. The silence wasn't the usual soft quiet that comes with living alone. It was the kind of silence that arrives right before a storm. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you hold your breath without realizing it. I opened my closet and pulled down a locked tin box from the top shelf. Inside were documents I had filed away months earlier. Papers my attorney had urged me to keep safe, just in case. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. Now, I understood. He had seen what I was too kind to notice. Michael and Jenna had signed those documents without reading a single line. They were too desperate, too relieved to question anything I put in front of them. Trusting me was easy. Respecting me, apparently, was not. I ran my fingers over the edges of the papers, feeling the weight of what they represented. Legal protection, clear boundaries, consequences they never imagined would matter. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even feel particularly sad. What I felt was something quieter and far more dangerous. Resolve. The next morning, I woke to something I hadn't expected. 87 missed calls. I stared at my phone screen, watching notification after notification light up the display. Michael's name appeared over and over, mixed with Jenna's frantic messages and even calls from her relatives, people I barely knew. "Mom, please call me back." "We need to talk." "Something's wrong, please pick up." "Why aren't you answering?" I set the phone down and made myself a cup of coffee. The kettle bubbled on the stove, filling my kitchen with a familiar sound that felt strangely comforting. I poured the water slowly, watching the steam rise, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. They knew something was wrong. They could sense it. My silence had finally spoken louder than any argument ever could. But they didn't know what was coming yet. They didn't know that the woman they dismissed, the mother they excluded, the person they treated like an ATM with emotional attachments, had already set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. And I wasn't about to tell them. Not yet. Because revenge doesn't start with rage or dramatic confrontations. It starts with calm, the kind that settles deep in your bones when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, one time too many. I took a sip of my coffee and let my phone buzz again on the counter. Another call from Michael, another voicemail I wouldn't listen to, another vibration that meant they were finally starting to panic. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them feel the weight of being ignored, the same way I felt it every time they canceled plans or excluded me from gatherings or sent those polite little excuses about why I wouldn't enjoy their parties. But before I explain what happened next, let me take you back to where this whole mess started. Let me show you how a single midnight phone call 6 months earlier led me to this kitchen, this coffee, and this moment of perfect, quiet clarity. Because the truth is, that Thanksgiving text wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment I finally stopped pretending everything was okay. My name is Helen Parker, and I am 71 years old. I know what you're thinking. 71 sounds like someone who should be slowing down, taking things easy, maybe spending days watching game shows or knitting blankets for grandchildren who visit twice a year. But that's never been who I am. I lost my husband, David, 11 years ago. Heart attack. Quick and cruel, the kind that doesn't give you time to say goodbye or finish the argument you started that morning about whose turn it was to take out the trash. One moment he was complaining about the coffee being too weak, and the next moment he was gone. The grief came in waves that first year. Some days I functioned perfectly. Other days I sat in his favorite chair and cried until my throat hurt. But somewhere between the funeral flowers wilting and the sympathy cards piling up in a drawer I never opened again, I learned something important. Silence can be a companion. It can sit with you at breakfast. It can follow you through the grocery store. It can even tuck you in at night when the bed feels too big and the house feels too empty. But silence can also be a warning. And on the night Jenna sent that message, the silence in my home felt different. It wasn't the usual quiet that comes with watering plants or folding laundry. It was the kind of silence that arrives right before a truth you've been avoiding finally shows its face. I've always been the type of person people underestimate. I'm small, just over 5 feet tall, with white hair I keep short because long hair at my age feels like I'm trying too hard. I wear comfortable shoes. I buy groceries on Tuesdays when the store is less crowded. I pay my bills on time and keep my house tidy without being obsessive about it. People see a quiet older woman and assume I'm fragile, that I need protecting, that I don't notice things. They're wrong. I notice everything. I notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. I notice when conversations go silent the moment I walk into a room. I notice when invitations stop coming and excuses start piling up like dirty dishes no one wants to wash. And I especially notice when my son starts avoiding eye contact. Michael was always a gentle child, soft-hearted in ways that made him easy to love and easy to hurt. He cried when we ran over a squirrel on the highway. He brought home stray cats and argued passionately about why we needed to keep them. He was the kid who gave his lunch money to classmates who forgot theirs, even if it meant he went hungry. That kindness never left him, even as he grew into a man who stood 6 feet tall and developed his father's broad shoulders. But kindness without boundaries becomes a weakness, and Michael never learned how to say no to the wrong people. Enter Jenna. They met at a company event 7 years ago. She worked in marketing, he worked in sales, and within 3 months they were engaged. I remember the first time he brought her to my house for dinner. She arrived with flowers, complimented my cooking, and laughed at all the right moments. I wanted to like her. I tried to like her. But there was something about the way she looked at my home that bothered me. Not with admiration or comfort, but with assessment. Like she was cataloging everything, measuring its worth, deciding what could be useful later. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just the protective instinct of a mother who didn't want to share her son. Maybe I was reading too much into a glance or a tone. Maybe I was just lonely and jealous that someone else would become the most important person in his life. So I pushed those feelings down and welcomed her into our family. The wedding was beautiful. Expensive, but beautiful. They honeymooned in Europe for 3 weeks, posting photos that made their life look like a magazine spread. When they bought their first house, I helped with the down payment. Not much, just enough to make the numbers work. Michael was grateful. Jenna sent a thank you card with a generic message that could have been copied from the internet. That should have been my first real warning. But mothers have a terrible habit of making excuses for the people their children love. We convince ourselves that things will get better, that time will smooth out the rough edges. That love will teach people how to be kinder. We're usually wrong. Over the years, I watched Jenna slowly take control of every decision in their marriage, where they lived, what they bought, who they spent time with, even when they visited me. At first, Michael would call on his own. We'd talk for an hour about nothing important, work stress, funny things he saw, memories of his father. But slowly, those calls became shorter. Then, less frequent. Then they stopped altogether unless Jenna was on the line too, steering the conversation like a captain navigating through rocks. I started hearing phrases I knew didn't come from my son. We think it's better if... We've decided that. We feel like you should. We. Always we. As if Michael's thoughts had been absorbed into hers, leaving no room for his own voice. And whenever I suggested something, anything, that didn't align with what Jenna wanted, the answer was always the same. Mom, you're overthinking it. Mom, you're being sensitive. Mom, we don't want to upset you, so maybe it's better if... Sensitive, fragile, easily upset. Those were the words she planted in his head, and eventually, he started repeating them without even realizing it. But I wasn't fragile, I was observant. And what I observed was a pattern of distance that only broke when they needed something. Money for a car repair, help with a home project. Babysitting their dog when they went on trips I wasn't invited to join. I gave freely because that's what mothers do. We give even when it hurts, even when we know we're being used, even when every instinct tells us to pull back and protect ourselves. But there's a limit to how much a person can give before they realize they're pouring into a bottomless well. I just didn't know I'd reached that limit until the night Jenna sent me that message about Thanksgiving. And now, sitting in my quiet kitchen, with 87 missed calls lighting up my phone screen, I understood something I should have seen years ago. They didn't value me. They valued what I could provide. And the moment I stopped providing, I stopped mattering. But that was about to change. Because the woman they dismissed, the mother they underestimated, the person they thought would always bend and forgive and give one more chance, had finally run out of mercy. And mercy, I was learning, is only beautiful when it's deserved. It happened 6 months before that Thanksgiving text. I was already in bed, reading a book I'd been trying to finish for weeks. The kind of mystery novel where you think you know who did it, but the author keeps throwing in twists that make you second-guess everything. I remember thinking how funny it was that I loved these kinds of stories, where nothing is what it seems and everyone has secrets. I should have recognized the irony. My phone rang at 11:43 p.m. Nobody calls that late unless something is very wrong or very drunk. I grabbed it off my nightstand, squinting at the screen. Michael's name glowed in the darkness. My stomach dropped before I even answered. Mom? His voice cracked on that single word. Not the normal crack of a bad connection, but the kind that comes when you've been crying and trying to hold it together and failing miserably at both. Michael, what's wrong? There was a pause, then a sound I hadn't heard since he was 12 years old and broke his arm falling off his bike. A sob, raw and desperate and completely unguarded. We're going to lose the house. 5 words. That was all it took to shatter my peaceful evening and pull me into a nightmare I didn't even know they were living. What do you mean lose the house? What happened? He stopped, took a breath, started again. We refinanced 2 years ago. We thought we could handle it. But then we needed work done on the roof, and the AC unit died, and Jenna's car needed replacing, and we kept thinking we'd catch up, but we didn't. In the background, I could hear Jenna crying. Loud, theatrical sobs that sounded less like genuine distress and more like a performance. The kind of crying that demands attention and sympathy and immediate action. How much are we talking about? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. $620,000. I sat up straighter in bed. $620,000? The original mortgage was $300,000. But we refinanced for more to consolidate some debt, and then we took out a home equity line, and then a personal loan to cover some investments that didn't work out. And now everything's coming due at once and we can't. His voice broke again. We can't make the payments, Mom. They're going to foreclose. We've got maybe 60 days before we lose everything. My mind raced through the math. $620,000. That wasn't credit card debt or a car payment they'd missed. That was years of decisions piling up like garbage no one wanted to take out. That was living beyond their means and hoping the future would somehow fix the present. Michael, how did this happen? You both have good jobs. You've been working steadily. Where did the money go? Jenna's voice cut through the background noise, sharp despite the tears. Tell her about the business opportunity. Tell her we were trying to invest in our future. Business opportunity. That phrase made my chest tighten. What business opportunity? Michael hesitated. Jenna's cousin had this startup idea. He needed investors. It seemed solid at the time. How much did you give him? $80,000. I closed my eyes. $80,000 to a cousin with a startup idea. The kind of decision made by people who watch too many success stories and ignore all the failure statistics. And the rest? We wanted to upgrade the kitchen. And the trip to Italy for our anniversary. And Jenna needed a new car because hers was getting old. And we thought if we just invested a little more, the returns would cover everything. But they didn't. And now? His voice dissolved into something I couldn't bear to hear. My son, my gentle, trusting, too kind for his own good son, was falling apart on the other end of the phone. And in the background, Jenna's sobs grew louder. Perfectly timed. Perfectly desperate. Please, Mom, I know it's a lot to ask. I know we messed up. But we don't know what else to do. If we lose this house, we lose everything. Our credit will be destroyed. We'll have nowhere to go. Please. Every instinct I had screamed at me to say no, to tell him this was a problem they created and a lesson they needed to learn, to explain that bailing them out would only teach them that someone would always catch them when they fell. But mothers don't operate on logic alone. We operate on love, even when love is the worst possible advisor. I thought about Michael as a little boy, showing up at my door with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting that I could fix anything. I thought about the years after David died, when Michael called every single day to make sure I was okay. I thought about the man he could be if he just learned to stand up for himself and make better choices. And I thought about the woman crying in the background, the one who seemed to cry loudest whenever money was involved. Mom, are you still there? I'm here, I said quietly. I wouldn't ask if we had any other option. I swear, we've tried everything. We talked to the bank. We looked into loan modifications. We even tried selling some things. But it's not enough. It's never enough. Silence stretched between us. The kind that feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you're about to jump, but not sure if there's water below or just rocks. Let me think about it, I finally said. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know this is huge. I know we don't deserve this, but thank you for even considering it. Jenna's voice again, closer to the phone now. We'll pay you back, I promise. As soon as we get back on our feet, every penny. Promises. The currency of people who have nothing else to offer. We hung up shortly after. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of what they were asking settle onto my shoulders like a coat made of stones. $620,000. That was almost everything David and I had built together. The emergency fund we saved for 30 years, the investments we carefully chose, the rental property we bought as insurance against an uncertain future. If I gave them that money, I'd be left with almost nothing. No safety net, no backup plan, no cushion for my own emergencies. But if I didn't, Michael would lose his home. And despite every red flag waving in my mind, despite every warning bell ringing in my gut, I couldn't stand the thought of my son standing in the rubble of his own mistakes with nowhere to go. So, I made the decision that would change everything. I decided to help them. And in doing so, I handed them the weapon they'd eventually use to cut me out of their lives completely. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator, a notepad, and every financial statement I could find. Numbers that represented 30 years of careful planning stared back at me. Numbers that David and I had built together, penny by penny, sacrifice by sacrifice. The emergency fund, $60,000 we'd saved by skipping vacations and driving old cars and eating leftovers until we were sick of them. The investment portfolio, $240,000 carefully grown over decades. Money we'd planned to use for our retirement travels, the trips we never got to take because David died before we could pack our first suitcase. The rental property, $320,000 in equity from a little house 2 towns over that we'd bought as insurance. David always said you needed a backup plan, something solid you could fall back on if everything else collapsed. Together, it added up to exactly $620,000. Everything we had. I stared at those numbers until my eyes burned. Each one represented a piece of our life together. The fund was our safety, the portfolio was our dreams, the property was our legacy. And now I was about to hand all of it over to save my son from consequences he'd created himself. But what choice did I have? I called my financial advisor the next morning, a man named Gerald who'd worked with David and me for over 20 years. He knew every dollar we had and where it came from. "Helen, are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked after I explained what I needed. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway. This is your entire safety net. If something happens to you, if you need medical care or assisted living or even just home repairs, you'll have nothing left." "I know. And you're giving this to your son? Not loaning it?" I paused. That word felt important. Loan. It implied repayment. It implied terms and expectations and accountability. "I'm helping my son save his home," I said carefully. Gerald sighed. The kind of sigh financial advisors give when they know you're about to make a terrible decision but can't legally stop you. "At least let me draft an agreement, something that protects you if things go wrong. Just basic documentation that clarifies this is a loan, not a gift." "Okay," I agreed, mostly because it seemed to make him feel better. "And Helen? Get a lawyer to review it before they sign. Not theirs, yours." "I will." 2 weeks later, I sat in my attorney's office with documents spread across his desk. Jonathan Hayes had handled David's estate after he died, and I trusted him more than most people I knew. He read through the agreement Gerald had drafted, making notes in the margins with a pen that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "This is good," he said finally, "but I want to add a transparency clause." "What's that?" "It allows you to release copies of this agreement to third parties if anyone accuses you of wrongdoing related to these funds. It's protection against slander or defamation. If someone tries to twist the narrative later, you'll have legal standing to show exactly what happened. Do you think that's necessary?" He looked at me over his reading glasses. "Helen, you're about to give away your entire life savings to family members. In my experience, money changes people. And when it does, they rarely remember things the way they actually happened. Michael wouldn't do that." "Maybe not, but you're not just helping Michael." He was right, of course. Jenna would have equal access to that money. And Jenna, I was beginning to understand, saw the world very differently than my son did. "Add the clause," I said. 3 days later, I met Michael and Jenna at a coffee shop downtown. I brought the paperwork in a manila folder that suddenly felt heavier than it should. Michael looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Jenna looked anxious but put together, her makeup perfect, her smile nervous. "Mom, I still can't believe you're doing this," Michael said as soon as I sat down. "Let's just go over the agreement first," I replied, sliding the folder across the table. Jenna reached for it immediately, but I noticed she barely glanced at the first page before flipping through the rest. Her eyes skimmed the words without really reading them. Michael did the same, nodding along like he was agreeing to terms and conditions on a website. "This just says you're lending us the money to save the house, and if we can, we'll pay you back," Jenna summarized. "Right?" "There's more detail than that," I said. "You should read it carefully." "We trust you, Mom," Michael said. "If you and your attorney think this is fair, then it's fair." Jenna was already signing her name at the bottom. Quick, confident strokes that betrayed no hesitation whatsoever. Michael signed next. Neither of them read past the first paragraph. I should have insisted. I should have made them sit there and go through every line, every clause, every word that might matter later. But I didn't. Because part of me still wanted to believe this was simple, that I was helping family and family would honor that help with gratitude and respect. How naive I was. The money transferred within 48 hours. I watched my accounts drain in real time, numbers disappearing from one place and appearing in another. 60,000, 240,000, 320,000. Gone. All of it. When the final transfer completed, I sat at my computer staring at the nearly empty balance. $12,000. That was all I had left from a lifetime of saving. My phone rang almost immediately. Mom, it went through. The bank confirmed everything. We're going to keep the house. Michael's voice shook with relief. I don't know how to thank you. I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't helped us. You're my son, I said simply. That's what mothers do. Jenna took the phone from him. Helen, you saved us. You literally saved our entire lives. I promise we'll never forget this. We're going to make you so proud. We're going to turn everything around and show you this wasn't a mistake. Promises again. So many promises. That weekend, they invited me over for dinner. A thank you celebration, they called it. Jenna cooked, which was rare. She made roast chicken and vegetables and even attempted a pie that came out slightly burned but tasted fine. Michael hugged me 3 times before we even sat down to eat. Jenna gave a toast. To Helen, who gave us a second chance when we didn't deserve one. We love you so much. It felt genuine. It felt warm. It felt like maybe, just maybe, this sacrifice would bring us closer together instead of pulling us apart. For exactly 3 weeks, everything seemed fine. They called regularly. They invited me to lunch. They even brought over flowers one Tuesday afternoon for no reason at all. But then, slowly, things started to shift. The calls became shorter, the invitations less frequent, the flowers stopped coming. And Jenna started using a phrase that made my chest tighten every time I heard it. We don't want to bother you. As if my presence was a bother. As if spending time with me was an obligation instead of a choice. I told myself I was imagining things, that they were just busy getting their lives back on track, that the distance was temporary. But deep down, in that quiet place where truth lives even when you don't want to acknowledge it, I knew something had changed. Saving them hadn't brought us closer. It had given them permission to pull away. Because people rarely value what comes too easily, and I had made saving them far too easy. The first missed Sunday dinner should have told me everything I needed to know. For years, we'd had a standing arrangement. Every other Sunday, Michael and Jenna would come over for dinner, nothing fancy. Just pot roast or chicken, mashed potatoes, whatever vegetables I had on hand. It was our time to catch up, to stay connected, to feel like family. The Sunday after I transferred the money, they came as usual. Michael ate 3 helpings and praised everything. Jenna complimented my table setting and took pictures of her plate like she was documenting evidence of a perfect life. 2 weeks later, they canceled. Last minute. Something came up at work, they said. The Sunday after that, they didn't even call. Just sent a text an hour before they were supposed to arrive. So sorry, not feeling well. Rain check? Rain check. As if family dinners were appointments you could reschedule like dentist visits. I told myself it was fine. People get busy. Life happens. They were probably still adjusting to their new financial stability, probably working extra hours to make sure they never ended up in that situation again. I reheated the pot roast I'd made and ate it alone at a table set for 3. The pattern continued. Canceled plans. Last-minute excuses. Text messages instead of phone calls. And slowly, painfully, I started to notice something that made my stomach turn. They weren't too busy for everyone, just too busy for me. I found out about the backyard barbecue from a photo Jenna posted online. There was Michael at the grill, wearing an apron I'd given him for Christmas. There was Jenna laughing with a group of people I vaguely recognized from their wedding. There were tables full of food, string lights hung between trees, and at least 20 people enjoying themselves in the home I'd saved. I wasn't invited. I stared at that photo for longer than I should have, zoomed in on their faces, happy and carefree, looked at the date stamp. It was last Saturday. The same Saturday Jenna had texted me saying they were having a quiet weekend at home and needed to rest. Quiet weekend. Right. I could have said something, could have called Michael and asked why I wasn't included, but I already knew the answer. Or worse, I'd get an excuse wrapped in concern. We didn't think you'd enjoy it, Mom. It was loud and went late. We know you like your peace and quiet. As if I was too old and fragile to handle a barbecue. The next blow came 3 weeks later. I'd made my famous chicken casserole, the one Michael had loved since he was 8 years old. I thought maybe if I showed up with food, the way I used to when he first moved out, we could spend some time together. No pressure, no expectations, just a mother visiting her son. I drove over on a Thursday evening, the casserole dish warm in a towel on the passenger seat. When I pulled up to their house, I noticed several cars in the driveway. Nice cars. The kind that belonged to people with money and status. I almost turned around right there. But I'd already come all this way, and the casserole was hot, and maybe they'd invite me in. Maybe we'd laugh about the surprise. Maybe it would be like old times. I knocked on the door, balancing the dish in one hand. Jenna answered. Her smile froze the moment she saw me. Not a natural pause, but the kind of freezing that happens when you see something you specifically didn't want to see. Helen. Hi. She didn't open the door wider. Didn't invite me in, just stood there blocking the entrance like a guard protecting something valuable. I made chicken casserole, I said, holding up the dish. I thought you might like some. Behind her, I could see the dining room. The table was set beautifully. Cloth napkins, wine glasses, candles. 4 people sat around it, dressed in business casual, mid-conversation. It looked like a scene from a magazine, elegant, intentional, exclusive. Oh, that's so sweet, Jenna said, her voice too bright. But we're actually in the middle of a dinner party, kind of a formal thing. Work people. Work people! The same excuse she'd used before. I can just drop this off and go, I offered. You know what, why don't you keep it? We're honestly so full already, and I'd hate for it to go to waste here. You should enjoy it. She was turning down my food. In all the years I'd known her, she'd never once refused something I cooked. She used to beg me for recipes, ask me to teach her my techniques, tell everyone her mother-in-law was the best cook she knew. Now she was handing my gesture back to me like returning a sweater that didn't fit. Jenna, who's at the door? Michael's voice came from inside. Just someone dropping something off, she called back. Not your mother, not Helen, just someone. Something inside me cracked. I should have called first, I said quietly. No, it's fine. We just have a full house tonight. You understand. I understood perfectly. Michael appeared behind her, guilt written all over his face. Mom, I didn't know you were coming. Obviously, I said. We would have invited you, but this is kind of a networking thing. Jenna's boss and some clients. It's important for her career. Important for her career. But apparently, I wasn't important enough to even mention. It's fine, I lied. I'll just head home. Wait, let me walk you out, Michael said, but Jenna's hand on his arm stopped him. Honey, they're waiting for the next course, she said sweetly. I'm sure your mom understands. He hesitated. For just a moment, I thought he might choose me, might tell his wife that his mother showing up with food was more important than impressing her boss. Might remember that I was the reason they still had this house to host dinner parties in. But he didn't. Thanks for stopping by, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow. The door closed. I stood on their porch holding a casserole dish that suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Through the window, I could see them return to the table. Laughter floated out into the evening air. Someone made a toast. Glasses clinked. Life continued inside, warm and bright and full. And I stood outside in the growing dark, finally understanding what I should have known from the beginning. They didn't want me. They wanted what I could provide. And now that I'd given them everything, I had nothing left to offer, which meant I had become nothing to them. I walked back to my car, placed the casserole on the passenger seat, and drove home in silence. That night, I ate the chicken alone, every bite tasting like the truth I'd been swallowing for months. I wasn't family. I was a resource they'd used up. And used-up resources get thrown away. The weeks that followed the casserole incident were quieter than I expected. Michael called once, apologizing for that night. He said Jenna felt terrible about turning me away. He said they'd been under so much pressure at work, trying to prove themselves, trying to rebuild their stability. He said all the things people say when they know they've hurt you but don't want to actually change their behavior. I accepted his apology, because that's what mothers do. We accept. We forgive. We make it easy for our children to hurt us again. October bled into November. The air turned colder. Trees dropped their leaves in piles that needed raking. And every year at this time, I started planning Thanksgiving. For as long as I could remember, Thanksgiving had been my holiday. David used to joke that I started planning the menu in September, testing recipes and making lists that covered every surface in the kitchen. After he died, the tradition continued, but smaller. Just Michael, Jenna, and me. Sometimes a neighbor or a friend who had nowhere else to go. It was never fancy, just turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, and 3 different kinds of pie because I could never choose just one. This year, I'd already bought the turkey. 20 pounds, enough for leftovers. I'd written out my menu, checked my pantry, made a shopping list for everything I still needed. I sent Michael a text 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Looking forward to seeing you both on the 28th. I'm making your dad's favorite stuffing recipe. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. That should have been my warning. Michael never used emojis when he had something real to say. But I ignored it. Chose to believe everything was fine. On Thanksgiving Eve, I spent the afternoon cleaning my house, dusting shelves, vacuuming carpets, polishing the dining table until it gleamed. I set out the good dishes, the ones David and I got as wedding gifts, white china with tiny blue flowers along the edges. The house looked ready, felt ready. I'd even put out a small centerpiece with pine cones and candles, the kind of decoration that makes a room feel warmer. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message. I was in my bedroom, already in my nightgown, reading before sleep. I picked up the phone, expecting something simple. Maybe Michael confirming what time to arrive. Maybe Jenna asking if she should bring wine. Instead, I saw this. Don't come to Thanksgiving. It's family only. We know you spent $620,000 to save our house, but we just want a simple, private holiday. Thanks for understanding. I read it 3 times. Each time, the words felt sharper, colder, more deliberately cruel. Don't come to Thanksgiving. Not we need to postpone or can we reschedule, or even we're not hosting this year. Just don't come. And then that phrase that made my hands shake. It's family only. Family only. As if I wasn't family. As if the woman who gave birth to Michael, who raised him, who liquidated her entire savings to rescue him, wasn't family enough to sit at a table in a house she'd saved. I stared at the message until the screen blurred. My first reaction wasn't tears. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that arrives when you've been wandering in fog for months and suddenly the air clears and you can see exactly where you are and how you got there. Every canceled dinner, every missed call, every excuse about being too busy or too tired or too overwhelmed, every event I wasn't invited to, every moment I was made to feel like a burden instead of a blessing. It all led here. To this message, to this moment. To this casual dismissal sent at 9:17 p.m., the night before a holiday I'd spent weeks preparing for. They didn't value me. They never had. I was useful when I had something to give. The moment I gave everything, I became disposable. My fingers moved across the screen almost automatically. I typed 2 words. Okay, noted. That was all. No questions, no arguments. No pleading for an explanation or demanding to know what family only meant when I was literally his mother. Just 2 words that carried more weight than Jenna would ever understand. I set the phone down on my nightstand and looked around my bedroom. The house I'd lived in for 40 years, the bed I'd shared with David, the dresser that held our wedding photo in a silver frame. the closet where his favorite sweater still hung because I couldn't bring myself to donate it. This was my home, my life, my peace. And somewhere across town, in a house I'd saved from foreclosure, my son and his wife were planning a Thanksgiving that specifically excluded the person who made it possible. I stood up and walked to my closet, pulled down that locked tin box, opened it with hands that didn't shake anymore. Inside were the documents they'd signed without reading, the agreement with all its clauses and protections and carefully worded boundaries, the transparency clause Jonathan had insisted on adding, the proof that I'd protected myself even when I was trying to help them. I ran my fingers over the pages, feeling the texture of the paper, the weight of what they represented. For months, I'd told myself I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive, that mothers should expect less and forgive more, that family was supposed to be difficult sometimes. But family wasn't supposed to be cruel. And that message, sent so casually, with such little regard for how it would land, was the cruelest thing anyone had done to me since David died. I pulled out my phone and called Jonathan. It was late, but he answered on the third ring. "Helen, everything okay?" "I need you to move forward with the withdrawal," I said. My voice was calm, steady. The kind of calm that comes not from peace but from decision. "Are you sure? Once we start this process, there's no going back." "I'm sure." "What happened?" "They uninvited me from Thanksgiving, called it family only." There was a long pause. When Jonathan spoke again, his voice was different, professional, sharp. "Send me the message. I'll file the paperwork first thing Friday morning." "Thank you." "Helen, they're going to panic when they realize what's happening." "I know. They're going to call. They're going to show up at your door. They're going to beg." "I know that too." "And you're prepared for that?" I looked at the message on my screen again, those words that cut deeper than they had any right to. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared." We hung up. I placed the documents back in the box, locked it, and returned it to the closet. Then I went back to bed, turned off the light, and for the first time in months, I slept deeply. Because revenge doesn't start with rage or screaming or dramatic confrontations. It starts with a decision. A quiet decision made in the dark by someone who finally understands that kindness without boundaries is just another word for being used. And I was done being used. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving. They'd eat their private, family-only meal without me. And by the time the leftovers were gone, they'd understand exactly what they'd lost when they sent that message. Not just my presence, but my protection. The morning after that message, I woke up feeling strangely light. Not happy, not relieved, but unburdened, like I'd been carrying something heavy for months and finally set it down. I made coffee, watered my plants, sat at the kitchen table with the morning sun streaming through the window. Everything looked the same as it always did, but something fundamental had shifted. I'd made a decision. And decisions, once made, have a way of clarifying everything that comes after. My phone sat silent on the table. No calls yet. No frantic messages. They probably assumed I'd accepted their dismissal the way I'd accepted everything else. Quietly, without protest. Like a good mother who knows her place. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and pulled up the digital copy of the agreement they'd signed, the one they'd barely glanced at before scribbling their names at the bottom. I'd read it dozens of times since that day in the coffee shop, but now I read it with different eyes. Eyes that saw it not as protection I hoped I'd never need, but as a weapon I was about to use. Let me tell you what they agreed to, what they signed without reading, what they dismissed as just paperwork that didn't matter. The document was titled Financial Assistance Agreement and Asset Protection Framework. Formal, legal, binding. Jonathan had drafted it carefully, including language that most people would skim over, assuming it was just standard legal protection for a large monetary gift. But it wasn't a gift. And the protections went both ways. Section 1 outlined the amount. $620,000 transferred from my accounts to theirs for the specific purpose of preventing foreclosure on their primary residence. Section 2 clarified that while no formal repayment schedule was required, the funds were structured as a loan, not a gift. This mattered for tax purposes. It mattered for estate planning. And it mattered because loans can be called in under certain conditions. Section 3 was where things got interesting. It stated that my continued financial support was conditional on maintaining reasonable family relationship standards. The language was deliberately vague, but Jonathan had explained it to me like this: if they treated me poorly, if they excluded me without cause, if they demonstrated through their actions that they no longer valued our family relationship, I could withdraw my support. Not immediately, not capriciously, but if a pattern of exclusion or disrespect could be documented, I had legal standing to protect myself. Section 4 outlined what would happen if I exercised that right. The full amount would become immediately due. Not in installments, not with grace periods, immediately. If they couldn't pay within 30 days, the debt would convert to a lien against their property. The house I'd saved would become collateral for the money they owed me. And if they still couldn't pay, I had the right to force a sale. When Jonathan first explained this section, I'd hesitated. "That seems harsh," I'd said. "It's protection," he'd replied. "You're giving them everything you have. The least they can do is treat you with basic respect. And if they don't, you shouldn't be left with nothing while they enjoy the life you funded." I'd agreed because it made sense, but I never thought I'd actually use it. Until now. Section 5 was the transparency clause, the part Jenna would come to regret most. It stated that if anyone, including Michael or Jenna, made false or misleading statements about the nature of my financial assistance, I had the right to release the full agreement to any relevant parties: family, friends, community members, anyone who needed to see the truth. This wasn't about public humiliation. It was about protection from slander. Jonathan had seen too many cases where generous family members got painted as villains after giving everything they had. People who helped getting accused of manipulation or control, or secretly expecting something in return. The transparency clause meant that if they tried to twist the narrative, I could show exactly what happened. No embellishment, no interpretation. Just the signed document that proved I'd helped them and asked for nothing except basic human decency in return. There was one more section, Section 6, the one that would matter most in the coming days. It required them to maintain good faith communication and inclusion in significant family events. Another vague phrase, but Jonathan had been specific about what it meant. Holidays, birthdays, major celebrations, the kind of events that define family relationships. If they systematically excluded me from these events without reasonable cause, it constituted a breach of the agreement, not a minor breach, not something we could overlook, but a fundamental violation of the spirit in which the money was given. "They'll never enforce this against you," Jonathan had said when we drafted it. "They need you too much. They'll be grateful enough to include you naturally." He'd been wrong. They'd taken the money, signed the papers, and then slowly, methodically, pushed me out of their lives. Every canceled dinner, every missed call, every event I learned about through social media instead of an invitation. And now, this message, this Thanksgiving message that spelled it out so clearly even a lawyer couldn't misinterpret it. "It's family only." That phrase alone was enough to trigger Section 6, but combined with everything else, the months of exclusion and dismissal, it created an undeniable pattern. I picked up my phone and looked at the message again. Read it one more time to make sure I wasn't overreacting, that I wasn't being too sensitive, too fragile, too old to understand what they really meant. But no matter how many times I read it, the meaning stayed the same. They didn't want me there. And they felt comfortable enough in their position, secure enough in their house, confident enough in my continued generosity to tell me so directly. They'd forgotten one crucial thing. The house wasn't secure, their position wasn't safe, and my generosity had limits they'd never bothered to find. Until now. I called Jonathan back. It was Thanksgiving morning. He was probably with his family, preparing his own meal, enjoying his own traditions. "Helen," he answered, "I've been expecting your call. Did you change your mind?" No, I said firmly. I want to move forward. Today. Today! It's Thanksgiving. Exactly. They're having their family-only Thanksgiving. I think it's appropriate that they spend it understanding what family actually means. There was a pause, then a sound that might have been a smile. You want them to receive the notice today? Yes. It'll be electronic. Email and certified digital delivery. Both of them will get it. Probably right around dinner time. Perfect. Helen, once I send this, there's no taking it back. The 30-day clock starts immediately. I understand. They'll panic. They'll call you. They'll show up at your house. Let them. Another pause. Longer this time. All right, Jonathan said. Give me 2 hours. I'll have everything filed and sent by noon. Thank you. And Helen? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Nobody should be treated the way they treated you, especially not by people they saved. We hung up. I looked around my quiet kitchen, the house where I'd planned to host Thanksgiving, the table that would stay empty today. The turkey I'd already donated to a neighbor who had a house full of guests. Everything was still, calm, ready. And somewhere across town, Michael and Jenna were preparing their family-only meal, completely unaware that their perfect Thanksgiving was about to become the worst day of their year. Because they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated the quiet woman who'd given them everything. And quiet women, when pushed too far, don't yell. They plan. I slept better that Thanksgiving night than I had in months. No tossing. No waking at 3 a.m. with anxious thoughts racing through my mind. No staring at the ceiling wondering what I'd done wrong or how I could fix a relationship that was already broken. Just deep, dreamless sleep. The kind that comes when you finally stop fighting against a truth you've known all along. When I woke up Friday morning, sunlight was already streaming through my curtains. I stretched, made my bed, and walked into the kitchen to start my coffee. That's when I saw my phone on the counter. The screen was lit up with notifications, dozens of them, so many that the phone had stopped vibrating and just sat there glowing with urgency. I picked it up and stared at the number at the top of the screen. 87 missed calls. 87. I scrolled through them slowly, watching the pattern emerge. Michael, Jenna, Michael, Jenna, Michael, Jenna's mother, Michael, Jenna. A number I didn't recognize. Michael. Jenna. Michael's college friend Dan. Jenna. Michael. 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 The calls had started at 11:52 the night before. Right around the time Jonathan said the electronic notices would be delivered, and they hadn't stopped until almost 4 a.m. I could picture it so clearly. Michael and Jenna, probably cleaning up after their family-only Thanksgiving dinner, relaxed and full, maybe even laughing about how peaceful the day had been without complications. Then the email notification. The certified digital document. The legal language that made their hearts stop. Notice of loan acceleration and repayment demand. I imagined Michael reading it first, his face going pale, calling for Jenna, reading it again together. The confusion turning to panic, the panic turning to frantic phone calls that I didn't answer. 18 voicemails waited for me. I didn't listen to them. Not yet. Instead, I poured my coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the phone silent in my hand. It buzzed. Another call. Michael. I watched his name flash on the screen until it went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came through. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. Something's wrong with the paperwork. Please call us back. Something's wrong with the paperwork. As if this was a mistake. A clerical error. Something that could be fixed with a quick phone call and a reasonable explanation. Another text, this one from Jenna. Helen, I don't understand what's happening. The email says we owe you the full amount within 30 days. That can't be right. Please call us so we can clear this up. Clear this up. Such a casual phrase for such a serious situation. I took a sip of my coffee, set the phone down, looked out the window at my small backyard where the bird feeder I'd filled yesterday was already attracting cardinals. The phone rang again. This time I did answer, but not to talk, just to hear. Mom? Michael's voice cracked. Mom, thank God. Listen, we got this crazy email last night. It says something about the loan being called in, and we have 30 days to pay everything back. But that doesn't make sense. You said we didn't have to pay you back. You said it was to help us. I stayed silent. Mom, are you there? I'm here, I said quietly. Okay, good, okay. So this is just a mistake, right? Some kind of automatic thing your lawyer sent by accident? Because we can't possibly pay back $620,000 in 30 days. That's impossible. Nobody could do that. It's not a mistake, I said. Silence on his end. Then a muffled sound like he was covering the phone to talk to someone. Jenna, probably, demanding to know what I was saying. What do you mean it's not a mistake? I mean exactly what the document says. The loan is being called in. You have 30 days. But why? We didn't do anything wrong. We've been making our house payments. We're back on track. Everything's fine. Is it? I asked. Is everything fine? Yes. I mean, we're doing so much better. The house is secure. We're managing our money better. We're exactly where we need to be. And where am I, Michael? Another pause. Longer this time. What do you mean? Where am I in your life, in your family, in your plans? You're my mother. You're always going to be in my life. Am I? Because yesterday you sent me a message saying Thanksgiving was family only, which means you don't consider me family. I heard him take a sharp breath, the sound of someone realizing they'd stepped on a landmine but not knowing how to back away without triggering the explosion. Mom, that wasn't. Jenna didn't mean it that way. She just meant it was going to be small. Just the two of us. Quiet. We thought you'd want a break from hosting. I didn't host. I was planning to host, until you told me not to come. It came out wrong. The message came out wrong. We would have invited you, but we thought you needed rest. You're always so stressed after big dinners. Lies. Comfortable, easy lies that he'd probably told himself until he believed them. Michael, do you remember signing the agreement? The what? The paperwork. When I gave you the money. The documents you both signed. Barely. We were so stressed. We just wanted to save the house. You said it was standard stuff. Did you read it? Silence. Did you read what you signed? Not really, he admitted. We trusted you. You should have read it. Because if you had, you'd know that the money was conditional. You'd know that excluding me from family events counts as a breach. You'd know that dismissing me the way you have for months was exactly what would trigger this situation. Mom, please, this is insane. You can't just demand $620,000 because we missed some dinners. It's not about missed dinners. It's about a pattern. It's about being uninvited from holidays. It's about standing on your porch with food while you hosted other people. It's about being called family only as if I'm not family at all. My doorbell rang. Once. Twice. 3 times in rapid succession. Are you at my house? I asked. We need to talk in person. Please open the door. I walked to the window and looked out. Michael's car was parked in my driveway. Both of them stood on my porch, phones in hand, looking desperate. No, I said simply. Mom, please, just let us explain. You've had months to explain. Months to include me. Months to treat me like I mattered. You chose not to. This is Jenna's fault, he said suddenly. She's the one who sent that message. I didn't even know about it until after. I would never have said family only. You have to believe me. Behind him, I could hear Jenna shouting, Don't blame this on me. You agreed. You said you wanted it quiet. And there it was. The truth coming out under pressure. 30 days, I said. That's what the agreement says. 30 days to repay in full. Or the debt converts to a lien against your house. We can't do that. You know we can't do that. Then you'll lose the house. The same house I saved. The same house where you hosted family-only Thanksgiving. I hung up. The doorbell rang again. Longer this time. More insistent. I could hear them arguing on my porch, their voices rising. But I didn't go to the door. Didn't look out the window. Didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing how calm I felt. Because for the first time since David died, I wasn't the one begging for scraps of attention. They were. They stayed on my porch for 20 minutes. I know because I watched the clock, listened to their voices rise and fall through the door, heard Jenna crying, Michael pleading, both of them taking turns pressing the doorbell like it might magically change my mind. It wouldn't. Finally, their footsteps retreated. Car doors slammed. The engine started and faded down the street. I made myself breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, ate slowly while reading the news on my tablet. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't felt in months. By noon, my phone had accumulated another 15 missed calls. I turned off the ringer and set it face down on the counter. The weekend passed quietly. I cleaned closets, organized my pantry, watched movies I'd been meaning to see. And through it all, my phone continued lighting up with messages I didn't read and calls I didn't answer. Monday morning brought something new. A frantic text from Michael at 6:47 a.m. The bank called. They know about the lien filing. They're reviewing our loan status. Mom, this is getting out of control. Please call me. I set the phone down and finished my coffee. 10 minutes later, another text. This one from Jenna. Our mortgage lender wants documentation of all our debts. They say if there's a lien against the house, it affects our loan terms. Helen, you're destroying everything we built. Please stop this. Everything they built, as if my $620,000 had nothing to do with it. At 9:15, my doorbell rang again. I looked through the window. Both of them stood there, but they looked different than they had Friday morning. Michael's shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. Jenna had no makeup on, her eyes red and swollen. They looked like people who hadn't slept in days. Good. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Just stood in the doorway, my hand on the frame, creating a barrier they couldn't cross without pushing past me. We need to talk, Michael said. His voice had lost its pleading tone. Now it just sounded tired, desperate. Then talk. Can we come in? No. Jenna made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Are you serious right now? You won't even let us inside. You made it clear I'm not welcome in your home. I'm extending the same courtesy. That was a misunderstanding, Michael said quickly. A stupid, horrible misunderstanding, Jenna already explained. She didn't mean family only the way it sounded. How did she mean it? They looked at each other. Neither had an answer. The bank is threatening to call our entire mortgage, Michael said, changing tactics. They're saying the lien creates a risk they didn't agree to. We could lose everything. You already lost everything, I said calmly. 6 months ago, I'm the one who saved you, and now I'm the one collecting what you owe. We don't have $620,000, Jenna said, her voice breaking. You know we don't have it. Nobody has that kind of money sitting around. You're asking for something impossible. Then you should have thought about that before you sent me that message. It was one text, one mistake, and you're going to destroy our entire lives over it. It wasn't one text. It was months of exclusion, months of canceling plans and avoiding me and treating me like I was a burden. That text was just the moment you finally said out loud what you'd been showing me for half a year. Michael stepped forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a frightened animal. Mom, please, I know we screwed up. I know we took you for granted. I know we should have treated you better. But this punishment doesn't fit what we did. This is nuclear. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, all I'm doing is asking for my money back. Money you agreed to repay if certain conditions weren't met. You signed that agreement. You didn't bother reading it, but you signed it. We signed it because we trusted you, Jenna said bitterly. We thought you were helping us, not setting a trap. I was helping you, and all I asked in return was basic respect, basic inclusion, basic acknowledgement that I exist. You couldn't even give me that. So what now? Michael's voice cracked. You want us to lose our house? You want us on the street? Is that what would make you happy? I want you to understand consequences. I want you to feel what it's like when someone you counted on pulls their support away. I want you to know how it feels to be dismissed and excluded and treated like you don't matter. Jenna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. We'll go to a lawyer. We'll fight this. You can't just change the terms of a gift after you gave it. It wasn't a gift. It was a loan. And your lawyer will tell you the same thing mine already has. The agreement is legally binding. You signed it. You violated the terms. And now the full amount is due. We'll tell everyone what you're doing, she threatened. We'll tell them how you're using money to control us, how you're punishing us for wanting one quiet holiday. I smiled, not a warm smile, not a friendly smile, but the smile of someone who'd already thought 3 steps ahead. Go ahead. Tell whoever you want. Because the agreement includes a transparency clause. The moment you start spreading your version of events, I have the legal right to release the full documentation to anyone who asks. Every signature, every clause, every text message. Let's see whose story people believe when they see the evidence. Her face went white. You wanted distance, I continued. You wanted me out of your family circle. You wanted holidays without me. Well, I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Distance. Complete, total, permanent distance. And the price of that distance is $620,000. Mom, please, Michael tried one more time. There has to be a way to fix this. There was. For months there was. You could have included me. You could have valued me. You could have treated me like family instead of an ATM you were embarrassed to be seen with. But you didn't, and now the time for fixing things has passed. So that's it? Jenna said, her voice hollow. You're really going to take everything from us? No, I corrected. I'm taking back what was mine. You're the ones who spent it, wasted it, and then threw me away when you didn't need me anymore. This is just you living with the choices you made. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. You have 26 days left. I suggest you figure something out. Then I closed the door and locked it. For 3 days, my phone stayed quiet. No calls from Michael, no texts from Jenna, no frantic doorbell rings at dawn. It was like they'd finally accepted that I meant what I said. I should have known better. On Thursday afternoon, my sister called. Linda, who lived 2 hours away and usually only contacted me on birthdays and holidays. Helen, I need to ask you something, she said after the briefest of greetings. All right. Is it true you're forcing Michael and Jenna out of their house? My hand tightened on the phone. Who told you that? Jenna called me. She was crying. She said you gave them money to save their home, and now you're demanding it back immediately. She said they're going to lose everything because you changed your mind about helping them. There it was, the story Jenna was telling. The version where I was the villain who promised help and then cruelly snatched it away. That's not what happened, I said. Then what did happen? Because she made it sound like you're punishing them for something small. She said you got upset about a holiday miscommunication and now you're destroying their lives. Holiday miscommunication. What a gentle way to describe being uninvited from Thanksgiving. Linda, did Jenna mention what that miscommunication was? She said you wanted to come to Thanksgiving and they asked if you could postpone because they were having a small private dinner. She said you took it personally. They told me not to come, said it was family only, after I spent $620,000 saving their house. Silence. Then, family only? But you're Michael's mother. Exactly. Okay, that's worse than she made it sound. But still, Helen, taking their house over one rude text seems extreme. It wasn't one text. It was months of being excluded, months of canceled plans and ignored calls, and the money wasn't a gift. It was a loan with clear terms they both signed. They violated those terms. Did they know about those terms? They signed a legal agreement. Whether they bothered to read it isn't my problem. Linda sighed. She's telling everyone you betrayed them, that you used the agreement to trap them, that you're a bitter, lonely woman who's trying to control their lives. Bitter, lonely, controlling. The words people use when they want to dismiss an older woman who refuses to be a doormat. Let her tell whoever she wants, I said. The truth has a way of coming out. We hung up shortly after. I sat with the phone in my hand, feeling the anger I'd kept carefully controlled start to simmer. Within an hour, 3 more people contacted me. My neighbor across the street, asking if everything was okay because she'd heard some concerning things. An old friend from book club, wanting to know if the rumors about me going after my son's family were true. Even Michael's college friend Dan, who I'd known since he was 20 years old, sent a careful text asking if I needed someone to talk to about the situation with Michael. Jenna was working fast, spreading her version to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the victim of a cruel, unreasonable mother-in-law who couldn't let go of control. I called Jonathan. "She started," I said when he answered. "Started what?" "Telling people her version, making me look like I'm the one who betrayed them." "What exactly is she saying?" I told him. Every message, every phone call, every carefully worded question that carried Jenna's narrative underneath. When I finished, Jonathan was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to invoke the transparency clause?" "Yes." "You understand what that means? Once I release these documents, everyone will see them. Family, friends, anyone Jenna's been talking to. It'll spread quickly." "That's exactly what I want. Let them see the truth. Let them see what she signed and what she's conveniently leaving out of her sob story. Give me a list of everyone who's contacted you with concerns. I'll send them the full agreement along with a brief explanation. Nothing dramatic, just the facts." I spent the next 30 minutes compiling names. Linda, my neighbor, my book club friend, Dan, 2 cousins, a former coworker, even the woman from church who'd sent a concerned email that morning. 9 people total. 9 people Jenna had reached with her version of events. Jonathan sent the documents that evening. A simple email with the subject line, "Documentation regarding financial assistance agreement." No accusations, no emotional language, just the signed agreement, the text message Jenna sent me about Thanksgiving, and a brief timeline showing months of canceled plans and exclusions. The response was immediate. Linda called first. "Helen, I had no idea. She didn't tell me any of this. She made it sound like you just decided to take the money back for no reason." "I know. The agreement clearly states the terms. And that text message, family only? After what you did for them? That's unforgivable." My neighbor came by in person, apologizing for doubting me. "I should have known better than to believe gossip. That girl has some nerve spreading lies about you after you saved their home." Dan sent a long text. "I've known you since college. I've seen how generous you've been with Michael his whole life. The fact that she twisted this into you being controlling is disgusting. Michael needs to grow a spine and stand up to her." One by one, the people Jenna had contacted with her version reached back out to me, and every single one of them saw through her story once they had the full picture. By Sunday, something else started happening. People Jenna hadn't directly contacted began getting copies, friends forwarding to friends, family members sharing with other family members. The document spread like water finding cracks, seeping into every corner of the social circle Jenna had tried to poison against me. My phone buzzed with a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Just saw the agreement. I'm so sorry you went through this. Jenna called me last week crying about how you abandoned them. She left out everything important. Everyone's talking about it now. Everyone's talking about it." That phrase should have made me uncomfortable. I'd never wanted to be the center of drama or gossip, but this wasn't drama. This was truth. And truth, once released, has momentum nothing can stop. Tuesday morning, I received a message from someone unexpected. "Helen, this is Jenna's mother. I need to speak with you. Can I come by?" I stared at that message for a long time. Jenna's mother, a woman I'd met maybe 5 times, always polite but distant, the kind of person who smiled at family gatherings but never really engaged. "When?" I replied. "Today, if possible. This is important." 2 o'clock. She arrived exactly on time, standing on my porch with her husband, both of them looking uncomfortable and tired. I opened the door. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I saw something I hadn't expected. Shame. Jenna's parents stood on my porch looking like people who'd just discovered their favorite restaurant had been serving them spoiled food for years. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered slowly, carefully, like they weren't sure if they were walking into a trap. I gestured toward the living room and we all sat down. Nobody spoke for a moment. The silence pressed heavy between us. Finally, Jenna's mother, Patricia, cleared her throat. "We saw the documents," she said. "I assumed you had." Jenna told us a very different story. Her voice was tight, controlled, the kind of control that comes from holding back anger. She said you gave them money as a gift, that there were no conditions, that you suddenly decided you wanted it back because you were lonely and upset about not being invited to one dinner. And now you know that's not true, I said. Her husband, Richard, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. She left out the agreement entirely. She never mentioned signing anything. She definitely never told us about the terms. She probably never read the terms herself, I said. We've been calling family members, Patricia continued, asking them to stop sharing the documents, to give Jenna some privacy while this gets sorted out, but nobody will stop. Everyone keeps forwarding them. Everyone keeps talking about it. That's what happens when truth spreads, I said simply. It moves faster than lies because people recognize it. This is humiliating for our family. Richard's voice carried an edge now. Our daughter is being talked about like she's some kind of villain. People we've known for years are looking at us differently. Maybe they should. Patricia's head snapped up. Excuse me? Your daughter told me not to come to Thanksgiving. Said it was family only. After I liquidated my entire life savings to save her house. She spent months excluding me from events, canceling plans, treating me like an embarrassment, and when I finally enforced the consequences she agreed to, she ran around telling everyone I betrayed her. So, yes, maybe people should look at your family differently. You trapped her, Patricia said, her voice rising. You gave them money knowing they were desperate, made them sign papers they didn't understand, and now you're using those papers to destroy them. I didn't trap anyone. I protected myself. There's a difference. You're a grown woman. You could have just talked to her, told her the text hurt your feelings, worked it out like adults. Instead, you went nuclear. I looked at her steadily. How many times should I have talked to her? How many canceled dinners should I have accepted? How many events should I have been excluded from before I was allowed to feel hurt? Tell me the exact number, Patricia, because I'd love to know where the line is. She didn't answer. I tried talking. I tried understanding. I tried giving them space and making excuses for why they never had time for me. And it didn't matter, because the problem wasn't communication. The problem was that once they got my money, they didn't need me anymore. That's not fair, Richard said. They were grateful. They told us how much they appreciated what you did. Then why did they uninvite me from Thanksgiving? Silence. Why did I find out about their backyard barbecue from photos posted online? Why did I show up at their house with food, only to discover they were hosting a dinner party I wasn't invited to? Why did every phone call get shorter and every visit get rescheduled until they stopped happening at all? Patricia looked away. Jenna said you were being too sensitive, that you read too much into normal busy schedules. Did she tell you what the text message said, the exact words? She said it was poorly worded. It said, "Don't come to Thanksgiving. It's family only." Those were her exact words. Family only. As if I'm not family. Richard exhaled slowly. She told us it was a misunderstanding, that you misinterpreted what she meant. There's no misinterpreting that phrase. Patricia stood up, her hands clasped in front of her. Regardless of what happened, we're asking you to stop sharing those documents, to let this settle quietly. The damage to Jenna's reputation is already done. Continuing to spread them is just cruel. I'm not spreading them. I released them to people who contacted me with accusations. The transparency clause gives me that right. What happened after that is out of my control. But you could ask people to stop. No. Helen, please. Your daughter tried to make me look like a bitter old woman who turned on her family for no reason. She lied to people I've known for years. She twisted the story to make herself look innocent and me look cruel. The documents are the only thing standing between me and a completely destroyed reputation. So no, I will not ask anyone to stop sharing the truth. Richard stood too. Then there's nothing more to say. You've made your choice. I made my choice when I gave them $620,000. They made their choice when they decided I wasn't worth a seat at Thanksgiving dinner. They walked to the door. Patricia paused with her hand on the handle. She's our daughter. We have to protect her. She's my son's wife, and he's my son, but nobody protected me. They left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the conversation settle into my bones. They hadn't come to understand, they'd come to manage the damage. To contain the spread of truth because it was making their family look bad. They didn't care that Jenna had hurt me. They cared that people knew about it. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Not a plea this time. Not an excuse. Just 5 words that changed everything. "Mom, I finally read it." Then another message. The whole agreement. Every word. I didn't understand what I was signing. I didn't understand what I was asking from you. I'm sorry. And then, a few minutes later, one more message that made something inside me shift. I'm done letting her speak for both of us. I sat down on the couch, staring at those words. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment Michael finally saw what I'd been seeing for months. His wife had controlled the narrative. She'd spoken for him, decided for him, excluded me on his behalf, and he'd let her because it was easier than confronting her. But something had broken. Maybe it was seeing the documents. Maybe it was watching his mother get attacked while he stayed silent. Maybe it was simply realizing that Jenna's version of events didn't match reality. Whatever it was, a crack had formed. And cracks, once they start, have a way of spreading. Michael's message sat on my phone for 2 days before I responded. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish him further, but because I needed to think about what his words actually meant. I'm done letting her speak for both of us. It sounded like accountability, like he was finally seeing what I'd seen all along. But words are easy when consequences are pressing down on you. The real test would be what happened next. On the 3rd day, another message came through. This one wasn't from Michael. It was from Jenna. Long, frantic, desperate in a way I'd never seen from her before. "Helen, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I messed up. I know the Thanksgiving message was horrible and I should never have sent it. I was stressed and overwhelmed and I took it out on you, and that was wrong. So wrong. I've been thinking about it nonstop, and I realize now how much you sacrificed for us, how much you gave up to save our home. And instead of being grateful, I pushed you away. I made excuses. I convinced Michael that we needed space when really I was just uncomfortable with how much we owed you. Not the money, the gratitude. It felt like this weight I couldn't carry, and instead of dealing with it properly, I just avoided you. I'm so sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back. But please, I'm begging you, please tell people to stop sharing those documents. My parents are getting calls. Michael's coworkers have seen them. Even my boss asked me about it because someone forwarded it to the office. Everyone's looking at me like I'm this terrible person and I can't handle the way people are treating me. I made a mistake. One stupid, thoughtless mistake. And now my entire life is falling apart. Please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll call everyone and tell them I lied. I'll admit I was wrong about everything. Just please make this stop. I can't take it anymore. I read it 3 times. Each time, I felt less sympathy and more clarity. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry people knew about it. She wasn't apologizing because she understood what she'd done. She was apologizing because facing consequences was uncomfortable. And most telling of all, she was asking me to fix the mess she created, to clean up her reputation, to make the discomfort go away so she could go back to her life without the weight of judgment. The same way she'd wanted me to go away when my presence became inconvenient. I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen, made myself tea, sat at the table where I'd eaten so many meals alone while they celebrated with others. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. For months, I'd poured myself into their lives, their problems, their needs. I'd given them my money, my time, my energy. I'd made myself smaller so they could feel bigger. I'd accepted scraps of attention and convinced myself it was enough. But it wasn't enough. And somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that I mattered too. Not because of what I could give, not because of what I could provide, but simply because I existed, because I was a person who deserved respect and inclusion and basic human kindness. Jenna's message asked me to save her again, to rescue her from the consequences she created the same way I'd rescued her from foreclosure. But I was done rescuing people who wouldn't even invite me to dinner. I picked up my phone and typed a response. Not long, not detailed, just one line that said everything I needed to say. Some lessons are meant to be learned the hard way. This one is yours. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. Not to ignore more messages, not to avoid more pleas, but because I was finished with this chapter of my life, finished with people who only valued me when I was useful, finished with sacrificing my peace for people who wouldn't sacrifice their comfort for me. I walked to the living room and looked around. My home, modest but comfortable, decorated with photos of David and me from better times, books on shelves we'd built together, furniture we'd chosen carefully, prioritizing quality over flash. This was what I had left after giving everything to Michael and Jenna, not much by their standards. No fancy renovations or expensive trips or impressive dinner parties. But it was mine, and it was enough. Outside, the sun was setting. Golden light filtered through the windows, making everything glow soft and warm. I sat in David's old chair, the one I couldn't bring myself to get rid of, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the peace that comes from standing firm, from choosing yourself when everyone else expects you to keep giving, from finally understanding that your value doesn't depend on how much you sacrifice. The strongest revenge isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it isn't about making people suffer or watching them fall apart. The strongest revenge is silence, distance, and letting people live inside the consequences they created. I didn't take Jenna's house. She took her own house by treating the person who saved it like garbage. I didn't destroy their reputation. They destroyed it by lying about what happened. I didn't ruin their Thanksgiving. They ruined it themselves when they decided family only didn't include me. All I did was stop protecting them from the truth. And the truth, it turns out, was heavy enough to crush them without any help from me. As the room grew darker and the house settled into evening quiet, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who answered every call, who dropped everything to help, who made excuses for people who didn't deserve them. She was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all, someone who understood that you can't pour from an empty cup, and mine had been empty for months while I kept pretending it was full. I'd given them $620,000. They'd given me a text message telling me I wasn't family. And somehow, I was the one who came out ahead. Because I still had myself. And that, I was learning, was worth more than anything they could ever repay. Now, if you've made it this far in my story, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Was I right to enforce the agreement? Would you have done the same? Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe because there are more stories where this came from. Stories about people who were underestimated, pushed aside, and written off, but who found the strength to stand up for themselves when it mattered most. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop being kind to people who don't deserve it.